All right, David, you can start whenever you're ready.
Sorry, Mark, I couldn't see the record button. Morning, everyone. Look, my name's Dave Gale. Obviously, I'm senior marker. I'm not going to run through at this point what questions we're marking. You'll see that on the slide. My marking team, just want to thank them for a wonderful job this year. But we had most of our questions in Standard 1 Mathematics and Standard 2 Mathematics were common. You'll see that I'm going to start with question 11 in Standard 1 Mathematics, which is also question 16 in Standard 2 Mathematics. So this question here was just a right angle trigonometry question, obviously introduced in stage 4. And look, just the overall feeling towards this, you know, how candidates responded to this question was that they attempted the question very well and had lots of success on actually achieving the correct answer. So in better responses, students showed clear understanding of right angle trig and the trig ratios. Things that students can be encouraged on or need to work on. Look, it's really important that they clearly write their working, and then they make sure that they write all steps to gain partial marks. You know, so I've written there, write all steps when forming an equation to gain partial marks when an error is made. And also, where some candidates did go wrong, they need to learn more effectively how to choose the correct trigonometric ratio. For part B, again, a stage 4 concept. Candidates actually, you know, most candidates were able to achieve 1 or 2 marks here. We had very few NAs in this response, I think for the fact that it's originally reduced in stage 4. Many students applied Pythagoras theory correctly. Students encouraged to. Some lack some understanding on Pythagoras. Students need to make sure they write some working for Pythagoras to gain partial marks. There's you know, some students actually tried to use trig ratios, and there was a lack of understanding with the concepts of trig ratios. Just with those 2 questions, A and B, many students actually did B first and then used their answer in part B to actually achieve the answer in part A, which is perfectly fine, but it's just interesting to note. And then other students actually tried to or gain marks by, you know, using trig ratios for all concepts and actually not, you know, using Pythagoras at all. Moving on, this is a standard 1 question only. So this is question 17 of the standard paper. This was the budgeting question. In better responses, students showed all 3 steps working clearly, and I really want to emphasise that's those students that actually clearly communicated in writing what they were finding, you know, tended to achieve the correct response. Many students showed sound understanding to calculate personal expense and savings. Candidates encouraged to learn how to read a long question carefully using strategies such as underlining or highlighting to reinforce concepts. I think particularly in Standard 1 course, this would be something that teachers could focus on for their students. Some, you know, like many students actually got lost in actually what they were trying to achieve to get the result here. You need to label answers clearly. Some students struggle with the concepts of personal expense and what savings mean. And again, in the marking scheme, we're fairly generous on that. We just wanted to see that, you know, students could actually achieve a result of, you know, 102 for the personal expense, or the total expenses of 452, and then going on from there. Many students found a savings or a personal expense has struggled to find the number of weeks, and obviously the 4,930 divided by 58 to give you 85 weeks was the challenging part to gain that 3rd mark in that questions. And, you know, many students at Standard 1 level achieved the 1 or 2 marks and then struggled to gain the 3rd mark. Moving forward, Now again, it's a common question. So this is the networks question, the first networks question, I think, of the paper. So question 21 in standard 1 and question 18 in standard 2. Look, overall, I think the team would say that they're fairly pleased with how students attempted this. I've noted here, well attempted by both courses. Didn't necessarily mean that students were achieving the full 3 marks, but on the whole, our stats will show that, you know, many students were achieving 1, 2 or 3 marks with, you know, a limited number of NAs. It's important that, you know, neat and labelled drawings really help to gain marks. Good understanding of choosing smallest number for each step to create the minimum spanning tree, and correctly adding weights. So we did see, and which I'll mention this in a minute, we did see a lot of the candidates didn't actually, you know, label their nodes, label their weightings, and in their calculations made mistakes. So candidates are encouraged to understand the features of a minimum spanning tree, and I think I'd really like to emphasise that. You know, lots of candidates didn't actually create a minimum spanning tree, they just created a tree, and possibly that really needs to be emphasised, that, you know, the question is a minimum spanning tree. A minimum spanning tree has certain features, and it needed to, you know, create a tree that had every node in the actual original diagram. Understand the feature, which I've just I've repeated myself, sorry. Secondly, check their addition of the tree using a calculator. So we saw a lot of kids actually write a tree and then actually add it up incorrectly because they're moving at a faster rate. So just possibly emphasise the fact, use your calculator, it's there as a checker, it's also there that will eliminate silly mistakes. And double check, as I just said, that every vertex is labelled and every edge is weighted, and because that was a requirement in the marking scheme to get marks. Okay, the next question we have, again, was another common question. So it's question 27 in standard 1 and question 20 in standard 2. Okay, this is our tax question. Again, a concept that's introduced in stage 5, and on the whole, it was well attempted. Most students were able to achieve 1 or 2 or 3 marks in this question. Okay, so better responses. Candidates identified the correct row of tax and calculated tax payable. They calculated the PAYG, and they found the difference between their tax and PAYG. Students that had the most success to gain 3 marks clearly showed all steps, clearly well communicated on paper, and achieved, you know, 4 marks for these questions. Candidates are encouraged to make sure to read all parts of the question. Some students included Medicare, and specifically says ignore the Medicare, and look, it could be argued that was some confusion in the question, but we need to prepare our students that can possibly be asked both. Understand important terms of tax, so definitions of taxable income, tax payable, and PAYG. You know, I think for the candidates that weren't able to achieve marks, it's just a lack of understanding of what they actually had to do. Learn where to put brackets when using the calculator to calculate tax and when writing calculations. So we saw a lot of kids actually have the brackets in the wrong spot, type that into the calculator, and then obviously they calculate an incorrect answer. And then lastly, and this happened lots and lots of time, understand that subtracting 36,000 comes after calculating the tax. So they'd get the tax payable, they'd subtract the PAYG straight away, which is $36,000, okay, and then go from there, which obviously then wouldn't equate to a correct result. Last but not least, I feel like I've blown through this, but this is the question 28 of the standard 2 paper, which is a data question. So we see obviously correct hand side, correct answer is 38, median 9, median of 9.5 of the 2 data sets, and forming equation. I think out of the questions that my team had to mark, this was the most challenging. In consultation with the chief examiner, I think, basically for every piece of information a candidate was to achieve, they received a mark. So actually, in terms of marking, it made the marking process fairly positive. Look, in better responses, students were able to calculate the 2 medians, means from the 2 data set. They were able to apply their understanding and find the difference of the medians to form an equation to solve for the new score. Many candidates showed some understanding of the median and the mean to achieve partial marks. Okay, students encouraged to, again, this is a fairly worded question, which I think you could argue that the whole paper was, but kids need to actually break down, read the question, go through what I said previously, possibly highlight specific points that are important to the question, and then reread the question again just to make sure they fully comprehend things. So read and review the question carefully. Understand the concept of difference of the medians. So that was, a lot of kids would find that the median of the first data set of 9 and the median of the second data set of 9.5, and then not really know what to do with it. Not confuse the meaning of the median with the mean. So some weaker candidates actually just didn't know what mean and median were, and to form an equation and then to be able to solve it. So that was the most hardest part of the question. And the most challenging part of that was for the 4 marks. But if a student was able to find the 2 medians and find a difference, they were able to achieve 3 marks. So on the whole, the stats will show that most of the candidature actually were able to achieve marks in this question. In all of our responses, there were not a huge amount of NAs, which was very pleasing to see. And I hope that gives you a little bit of insight of the questions that we marked today. Thanks for letting me talk.